Good morning, everybody. There's a book that came out. The title of the book is Learning in 20 Hours. Basically, the author, his point is very solid point, that you want to learn something new. You want to learn about gardening. You want to learn to play a new instrument. And the Olam always has, they're like, play violin. I don't have anything to do with playing a violin. He says, if you're interested, all it takes is 20 hours. Now, you're not going to become the most professional. You're not going to be hired after 20 hours to play by the chasanas, but to learn a new trade, all it takes is 20 hours, and you'll become a balabas on that. You'll be able to play violin. If you put yourself in for 20 hours, you'll be able to know how to play violin. You'll be able to be a good gardener. I want to show two here that we're speaking about here about the Molad and about the Molad Halavana, all about the lunar cycle, that people think that it's mamish away, no shaykhs to them. Loi b'shamayim, loi meivim liyamhi, loi b'shamayim. Don't think that the moon is in Shemayim, but don't think that knowing about it is in Shemayim. Just to learn about it is if you put in, and I don't think you don't even need 20 hours for that. That's today's share what we'll do. And if you put in another few hours, I think 3-4 hours, you could become a balabas on Hilchas Kiddush HaChodesh. Now, you won't be able to learn the whole Rambam and everything, but to know the basics, it's not that far away. Once you learn the main basics about the lunar cycle, about the Molad, what the Molad is, once you learn the main basics, you'll be a balabas in Hilchas Kiddush HaChodesh. So that's my hakdama for the shir. The first thing before we start the shir, obviously we have to give a shver for Achsanya Shal Torah here, the Besmedish Arachaim, but all the shurim, especially our Daf Yomi shir that we have over here, and all the other shurim, and giving us the possibility to have the shir over here, and the Besmedish and the Anholo should have Atzlachavite and be marbitz more and more Torah. I'm going to split up the shir into two parts. First, we'll be speaking about the Molad Halavana and the lunar cycle. And the second part, we'll be speaking about the dateline. I'm going to go through like 6-7 topics in the Molad Halavana, 7 different topics, one thing at a time. We gave out the booklets, and we'll reference to the booklet when we need the booklet about it, and we'll go through over here. Let's start off. Before we start off, let's talk about the history about Kiddush HaChodesh. So the mitzvah Kiddush HaChodesh is the way we have the luach. There's two ways how to do Kiddush HaChodesh. Number one is the ikka way is when you mekadesh al pi riyah. When you mekadesh al pi edim, you have edim and mekadesh al pi riyah. That's the main way which they did it for thousands of years. And the second way is that you do it al pi cheshbon. You have a luach, and the luach tells you when Rosh Chodesh is. Now this that Klal Yisrael's mekadesh al pi riyah did not stop by the Korban Beis Hamikdash. The mekadesh al pi riyah al pi edim way after the Korban Beis Hamikdash, way into the times of the Amoraim. The Rambam says that even until the times of Abaye and Rava, they will still be mekadesh al pi riyah. Mekadesh al pi riyah, you need to have a bezdin in Eretz Yisrael, and there's still a bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. They're mekadesh al pi riyah for hundreds of years after the Korban, till the times of Abaye and Rava. Afterwards, when the bezdin already was in this battle, then they started using the luach, which we call al pi cheshbon, which we have a luach which was set up. The history of the luach, who made the luach was Hillel Hanasiah, Hillel ben Rebbe Gamliel, which was an anical from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, a Hillel, the second Hillel, not the Hillel of Tana, which is in the Amoraim. They say it's about the year 359 CE. 359, about the year 59, a good few hundred years after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, was Hillel when he was Masakin the Luach, and that's the Luach that we have today, which have a lot of intricate things, exactly all the specifics, how to set up the Luach. Now, we won't get to that today to get everything to be able to make a Luach on your own, but we're going to get to the basics. If you look in your booklet, I just want to read the Rambam. It's page number 2. It's marked on the top 1, 2. If you look in the page number 2 in the booklets, and the top it says page 2. Look with somebody else. We're just going to use the booklet, not just for reference. You look at number 1 in the Rambam over here. We brought a Rambam page. Hey Allah, forgive us from Kiddush HaChodesh. The Rambam says like this: and when they start making this cheshbon of Kiddush al pi the luach. Says the Rambam, Misoyt Chachmei HaGemara, from the end of the Chachmei HaGemara, the Eish Shachar B'Eretz Yisrael, and the Nishram Beznik, the end of the Amoraim. It means they were still doing Al Pi Riyah till the late times in the Amoraim. Then they started the Cheshbon, Abel B'Mei Chachmei Mishnah, Mei Chachmei Gemara, Ad Abaye V'Rava, Al Kviyas Eretz Yisrael HaYisayimcha. The Eidus Al Pi Riyah, the Mekadesh Al Pi Riyah, way into the Amoraim, even the times of Abaye and Rava, which was later Amoraim, the Mekadesh Al Pi Riyah. And I have here, Hillel Nasiah was in 359 CE. That is the first thing, the history about it. And now we have Al Pi Cheshbon, but the Kiddush Al Pi Riyah went on for 100 years, you need a Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. When the Bezdin Eretz Yisrael was in the Spatel, then they stopped Al Pi Riyah, and then they did Al Pi Cheshbon. So that's the first thing about the history of the Kiddush Al Pi Riyah and Kiddush Al Pi Luah. The next thing, let's start off with about what is the Molad Halavana and what is the lunar cycle. And this is the most important thing when you're learning about Kiddush HaChodesh, to know what is the Molad Halavana. So before we go further, we have to go about the lunar cycle, which I'll go through first the Kitzer, then we'll go through the Pratis exactly about the lunar cycle and what the Molad is. And people get confused. What the Molad is the Molad is when you see the moon, when you don't see the moon. Let's go through it. Kiyadua, so we have here orbit system, a universe, or not a universe, but we have here, here's the sun, this is the earth, and this is the moon. The moon, Kiyadua, circles around the earth, and it takes 1 month. What is 1 month? 1 month is, we'll start over here, the moon is over here. Everybody sees this is the moon, and this is the earth. 1 month is the time it takes for the moon to take one orbit, one circuit around the earth. That is called a month. That is 1 month. The time it takes for the moon to circle around the earth. That is a lunar cycle. Now, the moon does not have its own light. The moon gets its light from the sun. And that's what it depends on about how. Now, the moon always is, half of it is lit, half of it is dark. Now, we have this guy that has a flashlight, but it doesn't really help too much. But the moon, one side is facing the sun, the other side is facing away from the sun. Every day of the month, half of the moon is lit, half of the moon is dark. The difference is the part that's lit facing you or the part that's lit not facing you. In the beginning of the month, when I'll show you in the picture, the beginning of the month where the moon is on the other side of the earth, the side of the sun, so you're going to have half of the moon lit is facing the sun, the half that's not lit is facing you. You cannot see the moon. As the month goes further, which after 7 days pass, you'll be able to see half of the moon. And after 15 days pass, which the moon will be on the other side of the earth, then the dark side of the moon is away from us and the lit side of the moon is facing us, which is a full moon after 15 days. And it goes further the month, it starts getting smaller till when you get to the next time when it gets smaller. I look in page number 1, which you have the pictures of the moon phases. This is very important. Page number 1. We have here the moon phases. The phases of the moon. You have on the right side, you have the sunlight, and then you have the moon going around. You have the moon going around the earth. So you see on the right side where I said where Molad is. I'm going to explain exactly what Molad is in a second. At the beginning of the month, it's a dark moon. The new moon, in the beginning, it's dark. The side that's lit is facing the sun. The side that's dark is facing us. As the moon goes further and further, it gets a little bigger and bigger. So when you go to the other side, then the moon, after 15 days, you're going to have a full moon, which the lit side is facing us, and that's how it goes further the moon. But this is the cycle. The beginning is the Molad. After, I'll get questions in a second. We'll get to it. Most of the questions will be answered. And when you get 15 days later is the full moon, and then it starts getting smaller and smaller. That is the cycle of the moon. Now, what is the Molad Halavana? This is the most important thing to know. So basically, the basics, I'm going to get to exactly the times, but basically how long does it take for the moon to go around the earth? It basically takes about 29 and a half days, which means every 29 and a half days, we're going to have this cycle happening, getting bigger, and then afterwards getting smaller again. The same thing every month, that's what happens to the moon. Can't see it, gets bigger and bigger. 15 days later, it's a full moon. 15 days later, we're going to have, you're not going to see the moon. It's about 29 and a half days. We'll get to the exact in a second, but I want to pause this for a second. Now, what is the Molad Halavana? This is the most important thing. The Molad Halavana is, like you see in page number 1, it's called when the moon, the earth, and the sun are in conjunction, and you cannot see the moon at all. That is the Molad Halavana. The second that you cannot see the moon at all, that is called the Molad Halavana. And that is 1 second in the month. Take 29 and a half days, the whole orbit. When the moon is in the position in between the earth and the sun, where the whole dark side is facing us, you cannot see anything. That is called the Molad Halavana. That is when the Molad Halavana is, which that happens 1 second in the month. A second before that is still the old moon, which you're able to see the moon. A second afterwards, the moon starts going a little further, and then you'll be able to see a little light on the moon. The Molad is the second when you cannot see the moon, when it's conjunction with the earth and the sun, and the full dark side is facing up. That is called the Molad Havana, which yesterday we had the Shchodesh benching, and we called out the Molad. That's when the Molad. That is what the Molad Havana is. You cannot see the moon. When the Molad is, you cannot see the moon. So this coming month, when you got the Molad Havana, go out, you cannot see the moon by the Molad because the whole dark side is facing us. Now, just a riddle. Anybody knows when it's possible to see the moon on the Molad? There is a certain case where you could see the moon on the Molad, which people probably have a question over here. Anybody knows when you could see the moon on the Molad? Sometimes you could see the moon on the Molad. No? No? I'll ask another question, which will lead up to this. If you look at the way we have here, the orbit over here, the moon is in between the sun and the earth. This is called an eclipse, right? Eclipse is when the moon is in between the sun and the earth. Now, why is an eclipse every month? The answer is that most of the times, the moon is a little higher plane or lower than the earth. So it's not blocking, it's not in between mamish. Sometimes, which we won't get into, eclipse happens. What does eclipse happen means? It's like the way we have it in this thing, is the moon is mamish in between on the same plane, and then the moon blocks the light of the sun. And if eclipse happens, we had a few years ago in the summer. Eclipse is the Molad Havana. That's when eclipse happens, when the Molad, but it's on the same exact plane. So when you're seeing an eclipse, that's the time when you know exactly when the Molad is, and you see the Molad, because that's in the Molad. Now, most of the times, like we said, the moon is higher or lower. It's a little higher than the earth, so it's not going to be blocking the sun, but that's the Molad. So that's one time when you could see the moon on the mountain. If you can see the moon, you just see the darkness of it. That's one time. But that is what the Molad Havana is. Now, let's get exact to how long is the lunar cycle. So we have a Gemara, which is a Pella, like we'll see in a second. This Gemara is later on. We're going to get in a few dafim and daf yomi, which Rabbi Gamliel Hanasi says. He says, exactly how long the lunar cycle is. And Rabbi Gamliel says that the lunar cycle it takes to be exact, 29 days, 12 hours, and 973 halakim. I'll explain it exactly what it means. 29 days, 12 hours, 973 halakim, if you translate it into English, which means 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 33 seconds. That's how long the lunar cycle takes. A little more than 29 and a half days. Now, this Chazal was written in Gemara, recorded in the Gemara about 2,000 years ago. And they had a Messiah from it, which means they had probably a Messiah from Allah Moshe Sinai. Now, the Goyim did not have an exact amount. They knew that it takes about 29 and a half days, but they did not have exact amount. Today, the science has the exact amount. They have it with all their technology. And the Pella is that the Messiah of Reb Gamliel and today's science, that Reb Gamliel and today's science is mamish exactly the same. The difference between the science today and what Reb Gamliel said then is like 0.4 of a second difference in the lunar cycle, which is a Pella. Chazal had the exact thing 2,500 years ago. Today, the difference is about the way science, the Chazal say it's 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 3.3 seconds. And the way in the science, it's about 2.9 seconds. It's about 0.445 of a second of a difference. That's the whole difference of it. And if you look in the Rambam on page 2, he gives the amount. And look at number 3 in the Rambam on page number 2, 3 in the Rambam. I'm just going to read it. Just the Rambam says like this: when the moon gets together, the Molad, until it comes around another time. How long is that? 29 days, 12 hours. 793 halakim shah 29 days, 12 hours, 973 halakim. You see in the bottom, I have it in the lunar cycle, which I translated into minutes, 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3.3 seconds, and the science is 2.9 seconds. Mamash of Pella, Chazal had this 2,000 years. It's mamash rai p'toyim min hashemayim, mamash up in the rai p'toyim min hashemayim. But that is the cycle of the moon. Okay, so we had the Molad, and we had how long the lunar cycle is. Now, let's get into months, and then I'll speak about halakim. Whenever there's a Shchodesh benching, and they say that the Molad Alavana is the Molad is this and this, like yesterday was 12:55 and 13 halakim, and everybody is halakim mean halakim meher. We'll explain exactly now what is the halakim and why did Chazal set up the halakim. Now, very important to go to the next step is about months. Now, we just said that the lunar cycle is 29/12/973, 29/12/44 minutes, right? Now, Rosh Chodesh depends on, what is Rosh Chodesh depends on Bisman, when the Mekadosh up here, when you see the moon. We'll see in a second, you can only see the moon 24 hours later. After this daf chaf, we'll get to it in a few minutes. But now, basically, if you want to make a calendar and you want to average it out, so a lunar cycle takes 29 days, 12 hours. 12 hours there, we'll round it off. So basically, when you want to make a Chodesh, says the Rambam, so you have the Molad Halavana, 29 days, 12 hours, and the Chodesh should be now, it'll fall out this coming month, it will fall out 12:55 a.m. on Friday. So maybe let's make a Chodesh then. So Ram says a Chodesh is a day. You can't make a Chodesh in the middle of a day. You have to have the whole day. So what we do is, if the lunar cycle is 29 days and 12 hours, so what we do is we have in the Lua that some months are 29 days and some months are 30 days. Which if you have 2 months, 29 and 30 is 59 days, which comes out every 2 months you can have 59 days, which averages out with the Molad for every 2 months. Means a month really is 29 days, and the cycle of the moon is 29 days and 12 hours. Every 2 months, it's about 59 days. So that's what we have in the Luach. 1 month is Molad, 1 month is Chaser. So every 2 months, we're going to have 59 days, and that's how it goes, b'chulu, and that's how the months go, the Seder of the Chadashim, and that's why in the Yiddish Luach, the average year has how many days? 354 days. And which has 6 months Molad, 6 months Chaser, 6 months have 30 days, 6 months has 29 days, and it's usually a regular cycle starting from Tisha and Nisan. Tisha is Molad, Cheshvan is Chaser, Kislev is Molad, Tevis is Chaser, Shvat is Molad, Adar is Chaser, Nisan, then it goes Nisan, you're still in the same thing, except when you get Ibiyah, that's why your average year is 354 days, because you have Molad and Chaser. Every 2 months is about 59 days, because we're going to be the lunar cycle. So every 2 months of the lunar cycle is how many days? Every month is 29 and a half, but we can't make with 29 and a half. So either we're going to make 30th or Chodesh or 31st, which means every 2 months is 59, and that's how we average it out. Now, before I go further, I want to go further into it. Now, what are these halakim? Busy with halakim. So Chazal, when you have an hour, the way we have it is we have a day of 24 hours, and each hour has 60 minutes, and each minute has 60 seconds, so we'll have 3,600 seconds per hour. Chazal split an hour into halakim. That's how they did it. And the Ram says it was the easiest because we'll see in a second. They split an hour into 1,080 halakim. Each hour is 1,080 halakim. That's a Chazal split. That's what halakim are, which comes out each chelak is about 3.3 seconds. But Chazal took an hour and they split it. They split an hour into 1,080 halakim. That's how they split an hour into. And you could split it like that easily. 973 halakim means 973 out of 1,080 of an hour, which translates into our days 44 minutes and 3.3 seconds. But that's how they split it. And the Ram said that was the easiest because then you could split into hour, into halves, into quarters, into thirds, into eighths, into sixths. Easy way to split. But that's how. So we talk about halakim. We should know what a chelak is. There's 1,080 halakim in an hour, and the Rambam speaks this out. That's the 1,080 halakim in an hour. Okay. Now, the problem, what happens is here, and let's go a step further. So we just spoke about how we set up the month. The lunar cycle is about 29 and a half days. Every 2 months is 59 days. And that's what we have a Molad and a Chaser. Now, the thing is, we have a little extra, which the Rambam calls this she'eris to the month. It's not exactly, if the lunar cycle would be exactly 29 and a half days, every layman would be able to make a luach easily. 29 and a half days, every 2 months is 59 days. The Molad and Chaser, we would have, the luach would go on forever without any, you don't need any kunsin. 59, except Ibiyah, Ibiyah would make a little problems, that's true. But 29 and a half would be Machai. But the Metzias is, it's 29 and a half and 973 halakim, which we'll say is about 45 minutes. So what happens is, so every 2 months is 59 days. Now, if you go with a year, you have every month has an extra 45 minutes in the lunar cycle, which we did not cheshbon in, which comes out after a year. You have 45 times 12, and rounding off would be about, you'll have an extra 9 hours, which you're going off from the Molad. You made a year, 354 days, which is 29, 30, 29, 30. At the end of the year, you're going to be left with 9 hours, which you're going to be behind. because it took an extra 9 hours, the whole thing, because there was an extra 9 inches, 73 halakim, extra 45 minutes, which is one of the reasons why we have sometimes, even though a usual year is Molad Chaser, sometimes you have Cheshvan and Kislev, they might both be Molad, they might both be Chaser, and they might be Molad Chaser. Average year, it goes Molad Chaser, but sometimes if after 1 year you'll have 9 hours, after 2 years you'll have 18 hours, after 3 years you'll be 27 hours, you'll be a full day off of the Molad with your luach. So sometimes we have to add on an extra day to the luach, sometimes we have to take off. That's why I'm just saying a bekitzer, Cheshvan and Kislev are interchangeable. Sometimes they're both Molad, sometimes they're both Chaser, and sometimes they are both Molad and Chaser. That's why this is one of the cheshbonis, how we have to do it, because it's not exactly 29 and a half, it's 29 and a half and about 45 minutes, which start gathering up together, gathering more and more. Okay. Now let's go to the next step. So we just got what the lunar cycle is, we got what the chodesh is, and we got what the moilad is. So again, the moilad is when the moon is in conjunction, when you cannot see the moon. That's when the moilad is. Now let's go, when could you make, and this has to do very much with Afkaf in Seftes Shon. I'm not going to get into the Gemara now. Maybe I'll get into the Gemara later when we go to the Baal Morish Shab, when we get to the Dateline. I'll go through it, but let me speak it out in the Riyas Halavana. The Moilid is this coming month will be 12:55 and 13 Chalakim on Thursday night, Friday morning. The Moilid is not when you can see the moon. What is the Moilid? When you can't see the moon, when the moon is dark. Now with the lunar cycle, so the Moilid is, like we said, when the moon is here in the middle, this is the Moilid. A second, if you go a second before, the old moon was still around, right? That was the old moon. When the Moilad happens, the moon disappears. A little after the Moilad, the new moon starts appearing. That's the old moon was before the Moilad. The new moon starts appearing after. But the Moilad is when you can't see anything. A little before the Moilad, the moon was able to be seen. That's the old moon. A little after the Moilad, the new moon will be able to see. Now, when's the first time could you see the moon? Which is when you can make Kiddush HaChodesh. Kiddush HaChodesh is you cannot make when the Moilad is. Okay, the Moilad is when you can't see the moon. It means the Moilad is the conjunction, but Kiddush HaChodesh is when you can see the moon. And when you're in Mekadosh Al Piriya, and nothing to do with the Moilad, had to do when Adam saw the moon. Now, it takes 29 and a half days till the Moilad happens. Now, when's the first time you could see the moon? After the Moilad. Now, if anybody learned Daf Chaf yesterday, Rashi Shita is you cannot see it 6 hours before, you cannot see it 6 hours before. We're going to go with the Balamur, that it's 24 hours. And that's, I think, in science, it's brought down. I'm not asking again, but we're going to go with the Balamur. Balamur says, and which the Gemara says in the Lashon, but Rashi switches it, that the Balamur says that for 24 hours before the moon is too small, the sliver of the moon is too small to see it. You cannot see it for 24 hours before the Moilad. And the same thing for 24 hours after the Moilad, you cannot see the moon till 24 hours after the Moilad, you cannot see the moon. That means even though if you're going to go up to Shemayim, you're going to go up to the moon, you're going to take a spacecraft, you're going to take a spaceship from the Earth's side, you're going to go in front of the moon, and you'll be standing in front of the moon. Shas HaMoiled, moon is dark, right? You're on the same side of the Earth. It means if I take a spacecraft from there, let's put it by the Moiled place, by the Moiled. By the Moiled, you cannot see anything of the moon. If I take a spacecraft, I go right in front of here, I won't be able to see a thing because it's dark, right? A second later, the moon starts going the other way. I'll be able to see a small sliver of the moon because the Metzias is the second one it moves a drop to the side, the light of the sun is seen reflecting off the moon. So if you're going to be up in the sky, you'll be able to see a drop, but from Earth, you can't see it. Such a small sliver, you cannot see it till when? When with the Balamar? Till 24 hours. A telescope might be, that's true. Maybe, I didn't try that out. Try that out. With till 24 hours, you cannot see the sliver of the moon, which means that whenever the Moilad is, says the Balamar, the first time you'll be able to make your Shleidish is 24 hours later. So if the Moilad will be a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, the first time you'll be able to see the moon is Thursday night at 6 o'clock. So the Eidim will be able to see it Thursday night, to be able to come to Bezin Friday morning. That's the first time to see it. So when we speak about the Moilad, the first time is not when you can make a Shleidish, the opposite. I'm going to say you can only make a Shleidish 24 hours later. It's first. Now, is the Shleidish going to be 24 hours later? Depends if Eidim see it. If Eidim saw it, yes. If Eidim did not see it, not. So that's what it depends on. That is how the Baal Moilad learns. You need 24 hours after the Moilad. And that's what the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Chaf says, that if you want to make a Shleidish on a certain day, You want to make Wednesday to be Rosh Chodesh, you need Laila v'Yom min HaChodesh. Learns the Bar what more. It wasn't even Laila v'Yom min HaChodesh. Has to be that the full day is after the Moiled. You want to make Wednesday Rosh Chodesh, has to be the Moiled was not Wednesday, it was the day before. Why? Mitzias. You can only see it 24 hours later. Now, will you make Rosh Chodesh the next day? No. La Dafka. Depends if Adam see it or not. But this is very important point about it. This is the two things, which gets very confusing by the Olam. This is the clarity. The Moiled is when you cannot see the moon, when it's conjunction and you cannot see anything in the moon. That is when the Moiled is. The Chodesh could only be when you see the moon, which takes time for the seeing of the moon to happen, which according to the Baal Mar is 24 hours later. According to Rashi, it's 6 hours. I'm not getting into Rashi and Daf on the base. That's good, but according to Baal Mar, the first time you can make a Chodesh is only 24 hours after the Moiled was. That's the first. Will the Chodesh be to know? Depends if you see it or not. Now, interesting thing, there's a Shver Rashi, which the Biskarov says he doesn't understand, which this gets a little famprit. Biskarov says something similar. The Rashi Pashas by says, he brings down from Chazal, Hazeh, Kizeh, that Neskasha Moshe b'Moiled haLavana, Moshe was Neskasha and the Moiled haLavana, and the Eibusha showed him Kizeh Eivik Kadesh. This is how the moon should be, and you make Kaddish like that, and that's how you make Kiddush Chodesh al Piriyah. So the obvious question is, Neskasha Moshe, and the menorah was Neskasha Moshe, how to make the menorah. The moon, you see the moon, you see it. You don't see it, you don't see it. What is Neskasha Moshe on Kiddush Lavana, which the Eibush had to show him Kizeh, like this moon. Go outside, when you see the moon, it's good. If you can't see it, you're not. What's the Neskasha Moshe? So Zif the Biskarah, based on this, is that the moon really can be seen even before that. Physically, there's a sliver of light even before that. No, you just can't see it. You can't see, but there is a sliver of light. Let's say you'll take a telescope, let's say today's days. You'll take a telescope and you look 12 hours after the Moiled, you'll be able to see a drop in the moon. And there's a shear to the sliver. What was the shear? 24, the size of the moon 24 hours after the Moiled, that's the minimum shear. Let's say for some way I'll get to see it beforehand. I'll take a telescope, I'll take a spaceship, go up, and I'll be able to see the sliver beforehand. Is a shear to it. What is the shear? The shear of the size of the moon, 24 hours. So there is Neskasha Moshe, how much? This is the size. Now there is Mitziasin. Sometimes you'll be able to see the drop before, which depends on the different atmosphere things. That sometimes they can see it 22 hours before, but I'll pee this Briskerov would come out. But even if you saw it 22 hours before, because so you went to certain places, mamish clear as could be, it's not going to be enough. You need to have the shear of 24 hours. But basically, without confusing, is usually it's 24 hours, but it's this Moedik of Shap and Chazal. That you need to have the shear of the 24 hours, but the Lamaisa we're going with the 24 hours of the Munavi. I've made some pictures of it. I'll take some questions in 2-3 minutes after we finish the first half. I made pictures on page number 4 and 5. Open up your booklets, and these are pictures. Before I go further, one more thing, one last thing, very important. This is one of the most important things. The moon. The way we're not going to get into why is that, but the moon rises and sets through the month later and later. That's the Metzias. Why the science is like that? That's how it is. The sun rises and sets the same, basically. Say 7:15, 7:30 is sunrise. The next day maybe a minute or two off, but it's basically in the same range. The moon rises and sets every night about 15 minutes later every night. That's how it goes. About 50, I'm averaging 50. It's different nights, depends where it is, but about 50 minutes. It goes through the whole night. By the time of the Moiled, the time of the Kiddush al Piriyah, when you want to make a Chodesh, the first signing of the moon that's possible is by Shkia Sachama. The moon, at the beginning of the month, the moon sets with the sun. That's the Metzias. That's a fact every month. The moon sets together with the sun. It means the Moiled, this let's play it out this coming month. This coming month, the Moiled is 12:55 on Friday morning, right? The first time you can see the moon is when? 12:55 Shabbos morning, right? That's the size of the moon. That's by day. You see the moon by day? No. The first time when you can see it is when the sun is setting. The moon sets with the sun in the beginning of the month. That is the Metzias. So the first time you're able to see the moon in the beginning of the month is by Shkia Sachama. So if you're going to want to try to make, you want to be Mekadosh this month of Piriyah, please do not go out in the middle of the night and start looking for the moon. Take a day after the Moiled, whenever the next Shkia Sachama will be with the first time you'll be able to see the moon, which means this coming month, 12:55 is Moiled on Friday, 12:55 on Shabbos is physically the size of the moon big enough, but you can't see it in the middle of the night because sun's not around in the middle of the night. When's the first time it's around? Shkias Chama. Shabbos, afternoon, after the sun goes down, then's the first time you'll be able to see the moon. You can't see the middle of the day because the sunlight is blocks away, you can't see the moon when it's set. Now, I made pictures over here of the gradual sunset. I got pictures of somebody. The gradual sunset, page number 4 and 5. You see the gradual sunset on a certain day. This is by the first day of the month, first sighting of the moon. If you look at page number 4, you try to see anything, you see nothing in the horizon. The second picture of page number 4, there's a circle around which should be the moon, but it's Kamat can't see it. It's still a little too light after Shkias Chama. Page number 5, you turn the page, all of a sudden it's getting a little darker. It's a few minutes after Shkia. You see a letter or a small thing. And picture number 6, you see, I don't know if anyone sees it even, but then you can start seeing the moon. But you can only see it after Shkias Chama, and you have to chap it right away. Now, if you missed it, if no Edom chapped it, then when's the next chance to see the moon? The next night. The next night. That's it. No, there's no other. The moon's not around. The next night. So that's why the Edom are looking around by Shkias Chama to Chaparain when to see it. But that's the Metzias. Okay, we're gonna pause over here a second. I'll take some questions for a few minutes before I go to the dateline. So let me recap here a small synopsis of what we spoke about. Then we'll go to the next thing. Basically, we spoke about the history. The Kaddish of Yariya was till the times of the Meroyim. Then we spoke about the lunar cycle, which takes about 29 and a half days, exact 29 and a half, 973 halakim, which is 44 minutes and 3.3 seconds. We said the Molad is when you cannot see the moon. That's what the Molad is. Averaging out 2 months together comes out 59 days, but we have a she'eris, what the Rambam calls. We're going to have extra every year. We'll have extra 9 hours. Then we said the first time you can see the moon is not by the Molad. This is the most important thing, which is most confusing. You cannot see the moon by the Molad. The first time you can see the moon, when with the Balmar, is 24 hours after the Molad. Physically, it's too small, but that's not enough. You got to be by Shkias Chama. So the 24 hours after the Molad is physically the first time. You got to make it by Shkias. So if the Molad is, let's say 5:59 on a Wednesday, Kishmak, 5:59 on Thursday is the first sighting, you might be able to chop it by Shkias Chama or 6 o'clock, 6:10, 6:20 before the moon sets. So that's the next Metzias. Okay, let's take any shadows.
The Earth and
we go with that. What's moving?
There's 2 things going on.
There's 2 things moving. The Earth is spinning. The Earth is spinning. That's why.
So the beginning of the month, it's working that the sun and the moon are working simultaneously, and
they're in conjunction.
So let's say every day there's an hour it's going behind. So the next night it should be how much behind it?
About 50 minutes every night.
So the next night,
Yeah.
halfway through the one.
Yeah. I'm not gonna be able to get through this now.
And then what's the Earth? What's happening with the Earth?
The Earth spins every night. That's where the sun rises and sets. I can't get. It's 2 things that are happening. It's 2 orbits that are happening. And whenever we say that the moon is 29 and a half days and 973 halakim, is an average. It's an average. We can have a Gemara later. Gemara says sometimes the moon goes faster or slower. We have no time to speak about it scientifically now. But we say this is the average of it. There's a 14-hour difference that could be, but we're talking about the average. Yeah, let's take any other question. What is it? Shchodesh is when the Edom saw the moon and they come to the Bezin, they saw the moon. The first time you can see the moon is when 24 hours after. Nothing to do. The Shchodesh has to do with the Molad in the sense that if you know the Molad, you know the first time you can see the moon is only 24 hours afterwards. So the Gemara says if Edom are going to come say on Friday, this Friday, 12:55 a.m. is the Molad, Friday morning. Edom comes 6 o'clock to Bez and say we saw the moon. 6 o'clock before Shabbos. Edom kicks them out. It's impossible. If you know the Molad, you know the first time you can see the moon.
This month, Edom only have a certain amount.
Very small amount of time to see it. Very small.
And when they see it that day, that's it.
So they're going to see it at the beginning of the night. So they could come to Bez and that next day could be the Shchodesh.
The next one.
That means the night. That night. Let's say the night is the 30th. Let's say it's going 29 into 30. So the 30th night they sort the 30th night. The next morning they come to Bezin, which is the 30th day. Mekadosh the 30th day. If they miss that night,
How you said 24 hours later.
the Molad is 24. So 24 hours after Molad is the 29th to the 30th. So they can see it the 30th night.
This month, for a couple of minutes.
For a half hour about.
They come the next day.
They come, which is the same day, which is the 30th day. The 30th night, the 30th day. So by the Shkia, right?
What?
29th to 30th.
29 in the
I'm going in the month. The 29th day was, let's say, was Friday. The 30th day is Shabbos. So if they see it 29th, the 30th by night, they have morning, they can come in. If they're seeing it by night, they're going to come in the morning. No, Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. The 30th. I didn't tell you when the Molad was. This month they can't see it. Good boy. This month they can't see it. This month is 12:55. They shouldn't be able to see it. You're right. Oh yeah. This month is a problem. When you get to the Balabars. Yeah. We're gonna have this month. This month is gonna be the Balamar. This month, the Molad is 12:55 a.m. Friday morning, which according to what I just said now, you shouldn't be able to make a shchodesh till Shabbos. Now, we don't use the Molad anymore today. We just have a lunar, which is based on 29 and 30 days. The only day it's negay the Molad is Rosh Hashanah. The Shana, this Man Hariyah, they played around the Molad every Rosh Chodesh. Today we don't do it, but the negay the Molad is for Rosh Hashanah. Now there's one thing which the Gemara says, which is the complicated. Let me speak it out, which we'll get to the Balamar soon. The one complicated, the Gemara says not like the Balamar. The Gemara says that if the Molad was before Chatzos, you can make a shchodesh that day. If the Molad was after Chatzos, you can make a shchodesh only the next day. Which according to what we're saying, which that's what you asked, right? If the Molad is before Chatzos, you can only make it next day. That's going to be the goyiness of the Balamar, which has to do with the dateline, which we'll get to soon. That's a good question. Yeah.
Why do we not for the reason that we move around the crystal tables?
Could be also shown the Could be also a Loya Yeah, one of the there's a lot of cheshbonis. We're going to give out a pamphlet later about the Molad, and there's like 4 or 5 cheshbonis while we play around. Yeah, read it. Yeah, the Harvard's.
Why do we not move?
Oh, very good. I was part of the schedule, but we don't have too much time for the dateline. So basically, I'm going to say the kasha. Why do we mention the Molad? That's what everybody's confused. The Chodesh benching and the Chazan and the Gaba calls out as the Chodesh the Molad bezag 55 minutes noch 12 in 13 Chalukim. And everybody thinks from space, nobody knows it's flying. Who cares about the Molad? And get the Molad has nothing to do with the Chodesh, and they'll check around the next months when the Molad and the moon we do up Piluach. So it's not negaya when the Molad is. The only thing it's negaya is Kiddush Levana. Kiddush Levana you can make till when? Till the middle of the month. So if you know when the Molad is, and we just learned how long does the lunar cycle take? 29 days, 12 hours, and 970 Chalakim. Divide it in half. You could do Kiddush Levana till then. So that's what it's negaya. Yeah, Aaron, and then we'll go further.
Yeah, how come you're not supposed to say Kiddush Levana before the 7th of the month? Why aren't you supposed to say it after the 15th?
So once the 15th comes, it's a full moon, so it's not the Chidush Halavana. Some say you need the 7th, you need to have at least a shtickle of a oil, it should be at least a quarter of the moon. Okay, we're gonna go further now. We have to get to the second part of this year. I told all we're gonna aim for 50 minutes. We'll take questions afterwards. We have to go. I want to go to the second part of this year, which is about the dateline. We're aiming to finish about another 12 minutes. We might go another few minutes overtime if it's late for anybody, please. Okay, now we're going to go to the, what is it?
12 minutes and I'm
Okay. Now let's go to the second part. We're going to speak about the dateline. And we'll try to get back to the Balamohar, which is the big sheet in the dateline, and we're going to get to the Molad, which is a Moidiga. Once you'll appreciate it more. The Gemara that we said over before about it takes 24 hours, one Gemara. And the second Gemara says that if the Molad is before Chatzos, you can make his Shavana. How does it stem? Which will have to do with the dateline. Let's start off Hilchis date. Let's start off about the dateline, and let me just give a rundown of what we'll be speaking about. We'll speak about the dateline, the national dateline. We'll speak about the halachic dateline, and we're going to go into the history of the Mir Yeshiva when they went there. At one point, they were in Japan, Kobe, Japan, not Shanghai. Before they were in Shanghai, when they were Kobe, Japan, which where the Shiloh was in Soyer. We'll get to the history. So I just want to the kids about the dateline, go to the history, the Chaznish of Tikachinsky, and then I'm going to get back to where is the Chaznish coming from and where Tikachinsky. So we know that the Earth rotates, and the way it works is that the Earth rotates on its axis, and every 24 hours is another day. We could ignore the moon now. The moon's not negay now. The moon's going to sleep now. We could ignore the moon for now. Basically, what happens is, and you can't really see the light, that the Earth is a 360-degree circle, and it takes 24 hours to do one rotation. One day is like this, takes one rotation, one small rotation like this is going to be 24 hours. Now, because of this, we split up the world into 24 hours. Like by us, it's now 10:30, and Eretz Yisrael 7 hours later. What is that? 10:42. Got it? Sorry. 10:42. And Eretz Yisrael is 7 hours later. The way it goes is like this. Let's explain what's going on here. We'll start off. Let's say we start off in Eretz Yisrael. Let's get it. It's now is, let's say we'll make believe now is Netzach Chama in Eretz Yisrael. The Earth is rotating, and it's becoming Netzach Chama in Eretz Yisrael. As the Earth makes another 15 degrees rotation, it's going to be 15 degrees later will be Netzach Chama. Another 15-degree rotation, another 15 will be 15, and 7 hours later, which the Earth rotated 7 times 15 degrees, will become Netzach Chama by us. So basically what's happening is, we'll split it into hours, that every hour as the Earth rotates, it becomes new Netzach Chama for a new place, and every hour, that's how it goes. It's really every second, but we'll split it into hours, which splits the world into 15 degrees. Now what happens is like this. Let's take Sunday, Monday. In Eretz Yisrael, there was Netzach Chama now, Sunday morning, and after hour, and the next place, next hour, 24 hours later, it will be Monday morning in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah? Now there has to be one place in the world where you're going to have to put a deadline, where it's going to be Sunday, where it's going to be Monday. Let me explain. Let's say you want to start off by Eretz Yisrael. Let's make believe the world starts by Eretz Yisrael. So when it's Netzach Chama by Eretz Yisrael today in the morning, that was Nate's Sunday morning. An hour later is Sunday, next place. 7 hours later is by us. Instead of going east, what's if you go west of Eretz Yisrael? What was there? And there was the day before still the day behind. It was still Shabbos. Now you can have two places right next to each other. Now we have to be machal. There has to be one place in the earth. We're going to have to put a deadline where for one place it was Sunday morning and one place it was Shabbos, because it's a circle just revolving around and around. So where is going to be the starting point of the day? And that day I made us come in the world. We have to make somewhere a starting point in the day where one place it's turning the new day now. And as you go more east, an hour later will be the morning, the next place out. But if you go west, there's still a day behind. And it will take them another 23 hours to get the Netzach Chama Sunday morning. So you go back in time, this wasn't a Geya. You know, a guy was living in Hawaii, a guy was living in New Zealand, a guy in Australia, nobody met each other. And they had the days when again, Netzach Chama, today's Sunday, today's Monday, it didn't really make a difference. As later as technology, and we're busy flying across the world, we have to make one place, which is the dateline, which Askomas HaMedinas is, that they made the dateline is the national dateline. They made it. If you see in the maps, I have it in the maps over here, and in page number 8 or 9, they made the national dateline crossing across the Atlantic Ocean. If you see in the maps over here, they made it after Russia and after all the countries, the middle of the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, not the Atlantic Ocean. You look at page number 8. Don't get into the halachic one. You see the Kav HaTarich HaBeinu Lo'ami, the blue line that's going in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They decided that this is where the dateline is going to be. That's what they decided. Al Pi Hesken. Until then, it was never negay, and they decided Al Pi Hesken, like you have it over here. It's the middle of the easiest is because that's the best place where there's no land over there. So you make it in the middle of the ocean, which means like this. Over here, when you're going to be in Siberia over here, the day will start. Let's go to Bambi season. I don't want to get into Shabbos now. Where will be Netzach Chama over here Sunday morning, and an hour later it will be here. An hour later till here it'll take 24 hours till it'll turn Monday morning. If you go to the west, 1 hour over, it's not Monday morning. It was just Sunday morning, and it's mamash a day apart. You'll have two places on the map. Here it just turned Monday morning, and if you go to the west a little, an hour early, it's still Sunday morning. It's an hour. It's a day earlier, and that's how the dateline works. And this is a Hesken. There's nothing out the science to say that it's over there, but that's the easiest place where they made it. They made it in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Interesting is the first time, I don't know if they chapped it or not, Magellan, I think, was the first one that went around the world on a boat. I think he didn't survive it, but his boat made it around the world. 256 days or episodes, I don't remember how long it took. They came back to the same place, or one of the places they got to, they realized they're on the wrong day. And they didn't chop why, because they went around the world and there was no dateline then, and they didn't chop that somehow they thought it's Tuesday and it was really Monday. When they got to the place, it was Monday, they didn't chop what was going on. Later on, we chopped that they crossed somehow, they didn't cross a dateline, but they were going back in time because they were surrounding the world all the way. Okay. This is the dateline al pi the world, and this has no halachic ramifications at all. This is just a hesken that they made, which you'll be here will be Monday, and if you go this way, it will be Sunday. And the more you go this way, the more that you go this way, it will take a little later for Monday to start. Now, the Chazon Ish, the main two shittas about the halachic dateline, which again, the history of the halachic dateline, now wasn't to negate too much either about the halachic dateline either too much, because where was the Yishuv Olam? Basically, the Yishuv Olam was Avraham Avinu here. The whole Yishuv Olam was over here. That's where everybody lived for 1,000 years. No Yidden anywhere in this area, till later on. So it was halachically, there was never any halacha shayla when the halachic dateline is. Everybody was living over here. There's kamat, no tshuvas about it, not kamat, no gemaras about it, except the Balamoris Pshat and the Chacham Beis is the only Gemara that has a reference to a dateline, which would figure out a dateline. It was never negated. Now, there were some Yidden living in Japan at maybe 100, 200 years ago. They were living in Japan, and they were holding Japan as the rest of the world as it was. Now, what happened is in the history of, now let me just say the machlokes of Chazon Ish and the Kaczynski. I'll say the history of the Mir Yeshiva, and then I'll go into where the machlokes comes from. Chazon Ish held that the dateline, the halachic dateline, nothing to do with here, is 90 degrees west of Yerushalayim, of Eretz Yisrael, which is, what is this? 90 degrees east, sorry. 90 degrees Mizrach, 90 degrees east of, this is the halachic dateline. Cuts through Russia, cuts through Australia, which is about 125 degrees on the globe, which means that if here it's becoming Monday, if you cross over here it's Sunday. If here it's becoming Shabbos, if you cross over the dateline, it's becoming Friday. It's becoming, if here it's becoming Matzah Shabbos, here it's turning Shabbos. Now in the world it was not like that, because in the world when here was Shabbos, here's also Shabbos, because here the dateline is over here. That Kaczynski held is that the dateline is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, very a little close to the national dateline, which would be crossing, which is 180 degrees from Yerushalayim, go 180 degrees, which is the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which basically happens is that this whole area is not a shayla at all, and it goes bust of what the world is. The only difference would be is in Kaczynski, he's going to have a problem of Alaska and Hawaii, which we'll get to soon. But basically, the history over here is Japan was the problem. Japan is over the Chazon Ish's dateline, which would mean that if here is Shabbos, here it's still Friday. When here it turns Sunday, that's when it turns Shabbos over here. So Japan, it's not Shabbos on Saturday, it will be Shabbos on Sunday. According to Kaczynski, Japan goes with everything. We'll get to exactly what was Japan's. We'll get to that part. Now the history. Let's get to the history, and then we'll get back to the halachic side. I made a copy over here. You see the history of the Mir Yeshiva, which is page number says 1 on top, 7. It's right before the maps. It's and the Siv Hatzalah is three pages before the end. I made a picture. This is the history of the Mir Yeshiva. Let's say what happened, and then see where the problems happened, and go nicely through the history of what happened. The Mir, Shabbos, and Yom Kippur. And then we'll get back to the Chazon Ish and the Kaczynski. I think we'll aiming for another 10 minutes. So the Mir Yeshiva, when World War II broke out, they were stuck. All the yeshivas were stuck in Lita, in Vilna, in Poland, the middle over there. Most of the yeshivas got killed out. Most yeshivas were in Vilna, and they got killed out. For some reason, the Mir Yeshiva decided that they should escape to Russia. And they escaped to Russia. Now, Russia, everybody thought it was worse, but they escaped to Russia, they decided. And you see, they were able to make it across from Russia. There was a Trans-Siberia railroad that crossed across the whole Russia. And they were able to escape. They were able to go across the whole Russia, like you see over here, and get to the other side called Japan. And it was a nest, one of the only yeshivas that survived. Good chelik of the yeshiva was there, and they crossed across the whole Siberia, the whole Russia, and they were able to get to Japan, and that's how they escaped World War II. This was in the year 1941. and they got to Japan. Kobe, Japan was the place where they got them. A little afterwards, Japan kicked them out, and they sent them, like you see it, and they sent them into Shanghai, which is part of China, which we'll see later why China was not part of the China. But for small Tekufa, they were in Japan, Kobe, Japan, and nobody even knew about datelines too much. You learn Shas, you don't hear too much about Dateline. There was some in the Siders, they had a Messiah for Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim said that somehow on the eastern part of Russia, when you go to the east and there is a Shaila when Shabbos is, they say over when Baruch they got to America, he didn't know what to, he knew that Reb Chaim said that there's a suffix when you go to the east, he thought maybe America's part of it. So he started holding 2-day Shabbos in America until when they got from the Brisker Rav, that the Brisker Rav said that America is not part of the Shaila, it's only part of the Russia, the eastern part here, this Japan part. He was a Gerach Chassid, there was in the learning the Mir Yeshiva, and he sent a letter to Imre Emes. I heard there's a Shaila when Shabbos is. Is Shabbos on Saturday or Shabbos is on Sunday? So he sent a letter to the Imre Emes. When should I keep Shabbos? Imre Emes sent to Rav Tikatzinski. He was the head of the Luach, made the Luach over there in Yisrael. Michil Michal Tikatzinski says, be Mevarer when Shabbos is and send the Tshuva. Michil Michal Tikatzinski was Mevarer that Shabbos is on Saturday. It's like the rest of the world. The rest of the world holds it. Shema Yisrael keeps Shabbos the same. Rav Chatzkel Levenstein, who was part of the Shanghai, with the yeshiva in Shanghai, or in Shanghai in Japan, he was running the yeshiva there. So Rav Chatzkel Levenstein knew about Chaznish. This is in 1941. Chaznish was not too known about. If the Shaila would have happened another 10 years later, there would have been, if Chaznish was around, but then Chaznish wasn't too known. He knew about the Chaznish. Chatzkel went for some time to be Mashgiach in Lomzhin before the war. When he went there, Chaim Moshe Gudzinski told him, you should know, your Paisik Adar is a Chaznish living in Bnei Brak. All the Shailas go to him. So when Chatzkel got the Shaila, he said that Blaz Yudah Finkel, who's a Shiva Demir, was not with the Yeshiva in Shanghai. He escaped to Eretz Yisrael. He sent a message to Blaz Yudah, find out from the Chaznish, when should we keep Shabbos? And the Chaznish Shita is like that the date line is crossing across here, which means Japan is on the other side of the date line. And the Chaznish sent back the Shuvah that they should not keep Shabbos on Shabbos, they should keep Shabbos on Sunday. Chatzkel gets the telegram from Reb Blaz Yudah that Chaznish Paskin keep Shabbos on Sunday. So I think this is Thursday or Friday, so sometime in Chodesh Av. It comes into Shiva Rabbeisai. We have a Paisik Adar, Chaznish Paskin, that Shabbos, they were keeping Shabbos regular. Shabbos is not on Saturday, Shabbos is on Sunday. That Erev Shabbos, that Friday afternoon, Rav Chatzkel Levenstein comes into yeshiva in weekday clothes, and he starts okay, and he starts v'hurachem. That's about Shabbos. About Shabbos. He starts v'hurachem and starts Ma'ariv, Chol Digam Ma'ariv. Shabbos is Sunday, and you can imagine what went on over there. Fun to this back and forth. And that's what Chatzkel wanted to run the yeshiva, that Shabbos will be on Sunday, not on Shabbos, not on Saturday. And it was a split, obviously. Now, this didn't take too long because a few weeks later, most of the yeshiva, good part of the yeshiva got sent to Shanghai, and Shanghai was not part of the Shanghai. But there was a good part that got left in Kobe, Japan, and there was Yidden over there. And all of a sudden we hear B'Shaila, when Shabbos is one thing. Shabbos you could be machmer. You could hold 2 days in suffering, not do the Rises. Shabbos you won't do the Rais Sunday. It's Chodesh Elul, and now it's coming in Kippur. I'm just having the Gemara. You don't fast 2 days in Kippur. It's coming in Kippur, and now what are we going to do on Yom Kippur? What should we do on Yom Kippur? Which day should we hold Yom Kippur? Basically, that year Yom Kippur fell out on a Tuesday, on a Yom Dalet. Sorry, Yom Kippur fell out on a Wednesday, and according to the Chaznish, Yom Kippur should not be on Wednesday. Should be a day later. Should be on Thursday. So they sent a telegram in Chodesh Elul. Now we got to be Mevarer, and I'll read you the nusach of the telegram. This is on Yutes Elul. They sent a telegram, and I'm just going to say it as it says. It's not the cover that they didn't write the Rebbe, like all the Rabbanim. Probably the telegram, every letter, cost money. So Al Rabbanim, Mishakovsky, Alter, Herzog, Soloveitchik, Finkel, Meltzer, Bati Hornstein, Schleim, 350 Yehudim, Mischanen, and Hatzilu. Onu miyad be'eze yoim, lotzen yoim and Kippur, Agudis Rabbanim, Abali Batim Akova. So they asked, when should they fast on Yom Kippur? They sent a telegram, Yutesel, we got to know before Yom Kippur comes, when should we be fasting on Yom Kippur? Because they heard the Shaila, when is Shabbos? When is Yom Kippur? So the Rabbi Rashi then was a Herzog. He got together a oilam to ask him about, and the main one, which really was I'll get to the history at the end, Chimechel Tikatzinski was the Paisik of that group. He was the one that was talking in the Luach, and the Kitzer, they're donning it. They heard about the Chaznish and Bnei Brak is arguing on that. So there was a Psalm Yosef Zevin, who was, he wrote about it in the newspaper, and now halachically just wrote about it, and then they tried to send him to the Chaznish, let's make a pshara about it. And the Chaznish said the next thing, or maybe they spoke with each other, the Chaznish held that Yom Kippur is on Wednesday, not on Thursday. Time is going by, it's before Rosh Hashanah, they still don't know what to do. Rav Herzog says we got to get together after Rosh Hashanah. We have to get together. We have to task in the rice. We have to tell them what to do. Chaznish is telling to hold the Yom Kippur on a Wednesday. Tikatinsky's on a Thursday, and Tikatinsky's saying to do it on a Wednesday. Those are the team that he made up after Rosh Hashanah, and it says 3 Rabbanim were mamash Torah, the Tikatinsky and all the what are we going to do? Soim Gedalia after Rosh Hashanah, Chaznish goes to one of his relatives. Lady over there, Hoffman, and he wants to send a telegram to Kobe, Japan. Can't send it in a Brit, obviously, because it was the middle of the war. They're going to think they're spying. He had to get it into English, so he went to this lady to translate for him the telegram. So in Gedalia, he sends a telegram to Kobe, Japan. Achin Yikorim, Ichlu b'yom haravi, Tsumu tainis im kippur b'yom chamishi v'al t'chusha l'sham davar. Fast, eat on Wednesday, and fast on Thursday, and Chaznish was shocked about it. He didn't have any seikus. Wednesday is Tes Tishrei, and Yom Kippur is on a Thursday. That's what he sent the telegram there. Often the night sent. The next day, Dalet Tishrei, the Rabbanim got together in Yerushalayim. Somebody was representing Chaznish, obviously wasn't there, presenting it, and they did not agree with it. And Kitzur was really the main was of Tikatinsky. He held his ground, and he held that it goes like the world keeps it. And the Mela at the end on Zion Tishre, they send a telegram. The Herzog was the Rosh of it. It sends a telegram to Japan. Alagudis Rabbana Balabatim, Alayvin Yudis Yakuba. With Shuba, the Shuba, what you're asking, Asifas Harabatim. I want to get this. So whenever you learn history, you got to know what's behind the scenes. This is how the telegram went. Asifas Harabatim Hechlita. The Tainus is on Wednesday. Now I'm adding on, says a Herzog, that on Thursday, don't fast on Thursday because it's a sakana, but be knowing on Thursday, like it says in Shulchan Aruch in 6:18 in Simon 6:18 in Shulchan Aruch, which there says is when you have a suffix, keep one day, the other day only eat l'shiurim. So that's what he said. Wednesday is Yom Kippur, and Thursday eat l'shiurim. This is what Herzog from Hachlotas Harabanim, Asitas Harabanim in Yerushalayim. Yom Kippur came Tavshin Beis. Tavshin Beis Yom Kippur comes. What did the Olam do? The Olam that was made. A small Olam was not like the Chaznish, only a small Olam. Some Chevre fasted 2 days mamish. They stayed in bed for 2 days. The fast, I said they held the fast for 2 days. But most of the Olam went with their Rabbanim in Yerushalayim. That's what it looked like. And they fasted on the Wednesday. That is the history about it in the Mir Yeshiva. Very beautiful history. Now let's get into what the machlokes is, and we'll be messiahing with this, and hopefully we'll get to the Baal Hamar. What is the machlokes based on? I'm going to start with the Tikatinsky. I mean, I think it's Chaznish, but I'm not passing again enough, but just easier just to get where the Shaila comes from. If the Tikatinsky has a Sefer Yomen, and he goes through about the Molad, and you can see it in page, just Tikatinsky is in page number 9, you see where it cuts through the Tikatinsky, the red line, where it cuts through it, I'm using this map. When Tikatinsky held like this, where should Allah be? Now we don't have any current. Where should Allah be? So he went to Svar. You ask me where's Eretz Yisrael, what's everybody's going to say? Eretz Yisrael is the Hamzah, and we have Chazal about it. Eretz Yisrael is the middle of the world. So we'll make Eretz Yisrael the middle. If Eretz Yisrael is in the 35 degrees, we'll make the dateline should be 180 degrees to the side. That's what his secret. We have to fashion Eretz Yisrael is the middle of the world. So where's the dateline? If Eretz Yisrael is the middle, the dateline is 12 hours later, which cuts through over here, which cuts through over here through Hawaii, which is 180 degrees later. That's what the Tikatinsky held. We have to go with that Eretz Yisrael is the middle of the world. As Nish said, look in the Shainim, there's not too much about it. There's a Balamor, there's a Kozri. There's one statement that was written about it in the Shainim, the Talmud Rashi, Soidei Oivam. The dear God that he speaks about it often, but the main Shainim that speak about it is the Balamor. And he says clearly, like we'll explain in a second, where he says that the dateline is 90 degrees from Yerushalayim east. We have it's all over here. The dateline is 90 degrees east. That's where the dateline is, which means if you're in Yerushalayim, where does the day start? 6 hours early. 90 degrees is a quarter of the earth. 6 hours early is where the day starts. If you go to the west, you'll have another 18 hours to the other way, 270 degrees the other way. And that's what the Chazon Ish, which came out that Kobe, Japan was a day later. That was the Chazon Ish's Shita. Now, let me speak it out to Balmor, and we'll be Messiah with this beautiful. Where does it come into the Gemara? Now, the Gemara did not have a dateline. He said nobody was traveling across. There comes in the Gemara like this. Let's speak out two members from the Chaf. Let's speak out how the Gemara says it, and that's where he speaks out the dateline. And here will be Makasha, Molad, and Dateline together. We said earlier, the earliest time to see the moon, this out of Balmor learns the Gemara, is 24 hours after the Molad, which means if the Molad would be any day, you can only see the moon 24 hours later. So let's pick. Now, that's one member of the Gemara. So you can only make a Chodesh 24 hours after the dateline. But there's another member, which Rashi learns differently because of this. The Gemara says that if the Molad was before Chatzos Hayom, so let's take today. If the Molad is before 12 o'clock, you can make a Chodesh today. If the Molad is after 12 o'clock, you have to make a Chodesh tomorrow, which the reason is you can't see the moon right after the Molad. The problem is the two things don't stem. I thought the Balmor said you can't see the moon until 24 hours later. So if the Molad is today, let's say the Molad is 11:59 today, when's the first time you can see the moon? Tomorrow, Monday. So how can you make a Chodesh today? Look the Balmor like this. We're not being Mekadesh al Piriyu, we're being Mekadesh al Picheshmes. It's more like this. We're talking about Yerushalayim. And basically we're going to figure out if the Molad in Yerushalayim, when is the latest the Molad could be in Yerushalayim? So somebody in the world will be able to see the moon today. So it says the Gemara like this. If you're in Yerushalayim, 12 o'clock in Yerushalayim, right? What time is it? 270 degrees west. 6 o'clock. Right? The night is starting. 12 o'clock in Yerushalayim, let's say we're Sunday morning, 12 o'clock in Yerushalayim. If you go west 270 degrees, says the Baal HaMahar, it's 6 o'clock. Matzah Shabbos is starting over there. That's it. Again, you're 12 o'clock over here. This is the Chazon Ish Shita. The latest place in the earth away from you is 18 hours later. Because Yerushalayim is 90 degrees in the daylight. If you go to the east, is the beginning of the day, 6 hours. You go to the west, you have another 18 hours. And the Balmor says this mafurish. That if in Yerushalayim, the latest, if you're 12 o'clock in Yerushalayim, 18 hours later will be the end of the will be the beginning of the day somewhere else. That's what it says. You split the world into 90 degrees from Yerushalayim one way, 270 the other way, which means 60 degrees, which means if the day, let's start a day over here. If the day starts over here, this is where the day starts. 6 hours later will be Yerushalayim. 18 hours later will be 24 hours later will be the rest of the world. So it says the Moedik the Balmor, he says. If the Molad is before Chatzos Hayom on a Sunday, 11:59. How many if you have a place that's the furthest west place, what time is it? It's just starting over there. We're just starting Sunday. Matzah Shabbos is starting at 6 o'clock. If in Yerushalayim it's 12 o'clock, 11:59 in the afternoon, Sunday morning. It means the other place is 5:59, 6 o'clock. Shabbos is finishing, Sunday starting. They have 24 hours to see the moon. So the Molad was before Chatzos Hayom, is somewhere in the world will be able to see the moon on Sunday, not in Yerushalayim, because Yerushalayim only has another 6 hours to Sunday. But if it's 12 o'clock, the Molad is 11:59 on Sunday morning, that means somewhere else, what time is it? It's 5:59, 6 o'clock, starting Sunday. Matzah Shabbos at night. They'll have 24 hours to see the moon. To be able to make a Chodesh today, all you need is to have one place in the world which can see the moon today. Now, you're not Mekadesh al Piriyu. You can't do that. You have to get the Kachavir. But when you're making a Cheshvan Aluach, it's enough that one place in the world could see the moon on that day. So in the middle of the Etzad the Balmor learns the Gemara. And that's the 6 and the 18 hours I can't get into. That's the Gemara. 6 and 18 hours is not Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. 6 and 18 is 6 is Yerushalayim. 18, the Donald of the two, is the most western place in the world, which will have the day finishing 18 hours after Eretz Yisrael, which means they'll have a full 24 hours to have the Molad. That's why this coming month, which somebody asked before, the Molad is Friday morning, 12:55 a.m. In Yerushalayim, you're only going to see it 24 hours later. You go to Japan, you'll have 24 hours. And let's just be Messiah with this. So that is the Machlokes, the Chazon Ish, and Rav Tikhonshchinsky. Now, let's be Messiah one thing about history. Now, the way the Machlokes went, they spoke to each other, and Rav Tikhonshchinsky went to Sfar. He said, it's all in the middle of the world. Chazon Ish said, I don't know what Sfar is. It's Mefurish Yerushalayim. The Balmor says that Eretz Yisrael is the 6th hour, is 90 degrees, and there's 270 degrees further. There's 18 hours. Mamash Machurish in the Balmor. Tinsky had some kashas, something doesn't stim. He says the way the Balmor speaks the middle of the world. He says he's talking about the same Mizik, same Marav, and different Lashonis. And the thing says it's not true. It's not the same Mizik, same Marav. We have a whole America. They didn't know about America, so they didn't know about it. So he wants to switch it. But the Balmor and the Kuzi on the Purish, that Etzol is not the middle of the world. Etzol is 90 degrees into the day, and the dateline is 90 degrees east of Eretz Yisrael. Now, just want to be Messiah with history. If you read any history books, I want you to say that the Agudas Harabonim in Yerushalayim Paskin, like Rav Tikatinsky, and we should go that the dateline is 180 degrees from Eretz Yisrael. Now, there was no Agudas Harabonim over there. What happened was this, which they write in the books. The only one that Paskin was Rav Tikatinsky. No, they made a sifa with Torah Rabbanan, Herzog Gavin. Nobody was in the sugya. This girl was very upset how they called it. Nobody was in the sugya. The only one that was in the sugya was the Chaznish was in the sugya. Tikatinsky was also. It wasn't a psak came out of Yerushalayim. Nobody knew it. Not nobody. They didn't know too much, so they went along with Tikatinsky, and basically is that's just the history about it. That it was Machoiks of Tikatinsky and the Chaznish. Now, if anybody's flying there, go ask your local Orthodox what to do. But the one thing what changes is in Rav Tikatinsky is that Hawaii gets patched up and Alaska gets patched up. Because according to him, Hawaii is over here. I couldn't say Hawaii Island is over here. According to him, it's on the other side of the dateline, which patches up part of Alaska. But according to the Chaznish, Hawaii and Alaska on the world side of the day is together with the world. Japan, I forgot to be Messiah. One last thing with the Messiah. You said about New Zealand. One last thing I forgot to speak out is the problem in the Chaznishes, which is a big kasha, which the Oilam asks is kasha. According to the Chaznish, it's 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim. Problem is, Australia gets split in half. Russia, a good part of Siberia is on the other side of the dateline, which the Yisoidei Oilam already asked this kasha. He says it's impossible to have a dateline in the middle, which means you could have two neighbors. One guy's in New York, one guy's in New Jersey, one guy with Shabbos, and the other guy it's Friday on the same two neighbors. So that's a big kasha that Tinsky, that's what he wants to put it in the middle of the ocean. But the Chaznish, it's a chiddush in the Chaznish. Chaznish wants to say is that we go by the landmass. Whichever landmass is on the Etzol side, the whole thing he calls it a greater, gets schlepped along. So if Russia is on one side of the dateline, the whole Russia. If Australia is on one side of the dateline, the whole Australia is. Which means Australia is more east than Japan, but it's on the other day. Japan, which is an island, gets on the other side of the dateline, or New Zealand, which is an interesting thing, which comes out is, if you go with the Chaznish, you're living in Australia, so Australia would be Shabbos Saturday, it's on one side of the dateline, but if you go on a boat and you go into the ocean, on Sunday, the ocean is really the other side, should still be Shabbos, which is a shtickle of Bayat, but that is the halacha Maisa. Everybody should have a good day.